Dumilang Sanwanani, Kriyamwara, and of course a very good morning, afternoon, or evening to each and every one of you, depending of course on where you are watching from in the world. Welcome back to the Dumo show where we talk all things motivation, education, and of course entertainment. I do have special guest coming back for you, Ari the designer. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you, sir?
My G, I'm blessed, highly favored. I'm good. It was nice, but how you doing?
Beautiful. I'm fantastic, man. I'm fantastic.
That's what's up.
We did speak about who you are, what you do in the previous episode.
Yes,
so
sir.
if you do want to know about Ari the designer, go check out the previous episode. Drop your link, drop your handle.
Oh yeah. It's at Ari the designer. ARI_THE_DESIGAER.
Nice, bro. Sure.
You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? Yeah, and made by Ari is the clothing label on IG. All of us.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on this second episode.
Yes, sir.
This is of course season 2, episode 8. If you're tracking with us, today we will be talking about the value of money. In the previous episode, we spoke about the value of time. Today we speak about money.
Yes, sir.
Money.
Lola.
Everybody wants the money.
Lola.
So first things first. I always say to people that there are two types of currency in the world. And I'm not worried about rand, dollar, and all that stuff. I always say there's two types of currency. First currency is time. Second currency is money. Right? And the second thing that I usually say to people is that each and every person, when you come onto this world, you're gifted with 3 things. First one is your talent, that you can do, your abilities, your gift. And the second thing is time. Second thing is money. Right? And what's interesting about the value of time and money is that you can make money with time. Right? So if you got some time, you can make money. But the exchange is not the same between those two currencies because it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't buy time. Not to start the thing off on a bit of a downer note there. But no, man, we're talking about money today. So we're just gonna touch on a couple of things. We're gonna be talking about budgeting. We're gonna be talking about spending habits. We'll be talking about financial goals, short term, long term. We'll be speaking about a little bit about debt, because you can't not talk about debt when you're talking about saving money, investments, and but just to start things off, what do you think about money? What's your idea?
The concept of money as it is a thing that does not exist.
Okay.
You know.
So to me about that,
what we consider and understand money to be is something that doesn't exist. It's something of no value.
Okay.
You know, or let me not say of no value. It's of minimal value, right? So if anybody listening to this understands the history of money and how we got to money being what it is now, they'll understand why I say that, right? So historically, initially, it wasn't a thing of money. It was an exchange of value through a system of bartering. I have about 10 chickens, bro. I really need a goat because my family's coming from their homestead and they coming to my place. I need a goat to feed them. And you tell me, hey, bro, I can't give you a goat for only 10 chickens. I need about 40 of them.
Sure.
Then I'm like, damn, boy, you can't even put it down to 30 at least. Negotiate, we barter. I give you 30 chickens, you give me 1 goat. Okay. Now, although that may not be numerically like balancing, that's okay. That's besides the point. Like that's what it was. Barter throughout every single system. I need to build a house, bro. I need some hay. Okay, I got hay, bro. But what you gonna do for me? Okay, I'm gonna I got some seeds, I got some maize. We barter, that's the exchange, right? Money is a placeholder of exchange, right? So what happened is, just for anybody who may not know, eventually this system was replaced with the system of gold as a measure of value that you would give in exchange for something else, as opposed to getting 10, 30 chickens and having to transport them. You just have X amount of gold, a certain weight of gold gold in exchange.
Yeah.
And that became what we understand money to be initially, right? Excuse me. You know what happens in that is that that's where that gold, as the raw form, is created and turned into like coins, and into something that can that has a specific value and is of more or less specific weight, so that it's easier to calculate instead of having to walk around with a scale all the time. I have X amount of coins, right, that we know are weighed at about this weight.
Okay.
So if I have 10 coins, this is the weight I have, right?
Yeah.
That became the exchange. And then um, after that, for a while after that, eventually people were like, you know what? I don't like. I want to go buy a farm, bro. I don't want to be carrying tons of gold with me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to have to transport all of my
Yeah.
my servants with me and stuff like that. You know, I got it. You know what I'm saying? So how about this, right? I'll write you a statement saying that with this statement, it has my signature backed by my reputation that you know of. This is how much I owe you. And
that's how checks came about.
I will not confirm specifically that's how checks came around, but the concept is definitely like rooted in that, right?
Yeah.
So I will give you that. You know, I will give you that I owe you this amount. You know I got it. And when you are ready to pick it up or when we can take it to you, ayo, you will find it at X place and it's yours. And it's backed by the state or whoever has authority in that geographic location. It's backed by them to say that I won't cross you. You know, and then that's how it was. It's a much more seamless process. It's an easier process. And then the receiver can just be like, okay, I have this check worth this amount of gold. I'm gonna give it to this dude, this other dude, and he's gonna give me the value of that money. You know, so that's how it came about. And then eventually, it's actually interesting when you watch like documentaries on this. There's a fascinating Bitcoin documentary that starts off explaining the history of money, right? So when it's interesting how, and I don't want to get this specific part of the information I'm sharing, y'all can clarify with your own research in case there's any point that's out of that's inaccurate. It came a point in time in history in America where I believe there was going to be a war or something, or there was uncertainty in the economy, and people pulled out. They wanted to pull out their gold that they had signed on all these checks. So the bank became the holder of the physical gold that people would write value to. You know, the banks, the system of a bank backed by the government became the holder of that. So there was uncertainty, just like there was in COVID, when people were putting out cash and withdrawing cash, right? And then there was a whole crisis. Similar to that, people aren't putting out cash; they want to pull out actual gold. So they set a decree, and they were like across the land that, you know what, y'all can get this gold, but we give you our word that the value of gold that you have, you can spend. And here's what I will give you with my signature with the Minister of Finance there, which is now what we know as cash. You know, so that's what I'm saying. Like, and now to that's just context to say why I say it's just something that doesn't exist, right? So now we have that cash, right? That we have that just represents our trust in the government that they say this is 50 rand. So it must be, it is 50 rand. It must be 50 rand.
Yeah.
Because if I go to a store, they're not going to be like, this is not a 50 rand.
Yeah.
They were also told by the government, this is 50 rand. You know, because all of the money goes back to the bank, which is backed by the government. So, what I'm saying is that I wish I had a physical note here. That note that you look at to create that, it's probably like a few rands.
Okay.
Probably a few rands.
You gotta know, Chin. You gotta know, Chin.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know for you.
Oh, you gotta know. You gotta know.
Got a couple of notes for you.
Alright, cool. Whichever note it is. Even the biggest note. Cool. Creating this and creating this, almost the same amount of money in value. In value, and it's only a few rands. It's this signature. Where's the signature? Somewhere around here. It's a signature here for the audio listeners. I'm pointing to the signature on the 100 rand note. It's a signature here that says we say that this is actually this amount of money. Other than that, it's something that doesn't exist. It's still not 100 rand.
Yeah.
But we believe it to be.
Piece of paper.
Yeah, it's a piece of paper. But if we believe in consensus,
yeah,
then it's valuable to us. Hence the value of money.
Yeah. That's pure.
Sorry, I went on a tangent.
Let's take about 5 seconds. Let's just swallow all of that information. No, that's an interesting way to look at it. I've actually never thought about it that far, if I'm being honest. I've never thought about it to that point of what actually is it. Let's speak about financial goals a little bit.
Can I add one last point?
Go ahead.
One last point. And for anybody wondering, okay, bro, but you said that was in America that they created this bank and the system of money. How did it end up here? Wars, bro. And influence and power globally. That's how you establish your system into another geographic location, and they adopt it. So that's why it is the way it is. But yeah, you may continue, bro.
No. I just want to get your take on having financial goals, long term and short term. What do you think? What's your opinion on that?
Oh yeah, it's super important. It's understated though, because like I said, and I think we don't do it enough. It's understated. Just like in the previous episode, which anybody who hasn't seen that, I suggest you take a look at that. Right, just like mentioned in the previous episode. Excuse me. If you don't know, if you honestly do not know, like what how you are using that money, and you want 1 million, okay, how you get there? What are the steps to ensure that you are on track? It's easy to lose motivation if you don't have a plan. It's easy to lose that. It's difficult to track progress if you don't have a plan. Uh, and and like, so it's one thing to have like a financial goal. I think that I would equate that almost to motivation, and then the plan would be the process to get there, which is backed by discipline. So one, having a financial goal is important if you deem financial abundance as part of your definition of success or what success is. If you deem it, if you don't, bro, like you don't have to have a financial goal, bro. If your goals are abstract and intangible, not can't be like touched or whatnot, then don't worry about that. Yeah. But if you do, then it's extremely important.
Yeah. And speaking on the topic of long-term, short-term goals, it kind of merges a little bit into the matter of budgeting.
Yeah.
So let's speak about that a little bit. I know in the previous episode we spoke quite a bit on budgeting time, but now let's look at budgeting money. How do you view that?
I would equate budgeting to the knowledge of activity. Okay. So budgeting is having knowledge of a particular activity and how it will be done. So you're not caught off guard. So you don't find yourself in a situation where like people for my English audience, people, I don't know where the money went.
Yeah.
That's why budgeting is like super crucial. And I emphasize the knowledge bit so that it equips you to make better decisions and to actually see progress in your financial life. Because if you don't know, like it's just you're just not gonna see that progress. And I think your question was how do I see the value of budget? Please clarify
budgeting. What's your take on budgeting time? Money, sorry.
My take on budgeting money. Yeah, it's extremely important, bro, because like however amount of money you have, you can make 1 million a month.
Yeah.
And you can clap it. Not only for my non-Dubani, non-African speaking audience, you can finish it. You know what I mean? So it's budgeting is so important because it helps you understand what I'm going to be using my money on, and how I can keep money aside for things that are unexpected. If you like McDonald's and you want to buy it every week, that's cool, bro.
Yeah.
But like, know that though, you know, like know that. So I can't really put like a a value of importance to it, but it's super important, more than we actually act on or know it to be. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So there's this ratio that some people use. I think it's called the 70-20-10 ratio. I'll clarify on that in a little bit though. But yeah, what you were touching on, the matter of understanding how you work with your money, and making sure that it's budgeted and you understand it in a in a way that makes sense to you.
yeah.
So for a lot of people, it's not the same. We don't view money in the same way.
Yeah.
We don't see it in the same way. Therefore, we're not going to budget it in the same way.
Yeah.
But the model that I was talking about, the 70-20-10 principle, it's about having 10% that you put on the side. So that's money that you're gonna. For some people, it might go into tithe. For some people, it might go into investments. For some people, it might go into paying off the debt. Right. And then the 10-20% is the savings. So it's money that you put aside to say, okay, this money, X amount of money, saving out of the amount of money that you have. Right. And then the 70% is everything else, right? So your expenses, your luxury stuff, and all those type of things. I don't necessarily use that. But it's my principle is it's slightly different to that one. I call it the triple 10 and 5% principle. So that's what I use. So for 10% goes into tithing, 10% I'm paying myself. So out of X amount of money that you're earning in a month, 10% has to come to you. If you want to know a little bit more about that, you could check out the book Richest Man in Babylon. Very, very interesting book. Really challenges your thinking and the way that you view money. So I said 10% tithe, 10% imaliako, that you use for putting aside for you as your payment. Mholo wako. And then there's 10% that I put aside for investing. So if I want to invest maybe in a certain company in their shares, or I want to invest in a unit trust, or whatever it is that I want to invest into, it's going to fall under that 10%. And then there's a 5% that I put aside for what I consider emergency situations. Right. So you never know what might happen in life. There might be times when you just need money now, because something happened and now it's going to impact something else. Therefore, you need to have a little bit of money that you have that you've leveraged over a period of time, that you know if something were to happen, I can grab from that money. So you take, for example, I know this is not the ideal and best example, but you take the floods, for example. When something like that happens, where you get the money, you know, you know, these emergencies in life. I know back in high school, and I think this is actually where I got this from. One of my teachers, she had this thing where she had 10,000 rand aside as just emergency money. So at some point in time, something happened, someone needed to go to hospital, she grabbed from there. So things like that, things that you can't anticipate for, that you just might need money for, even if you don't need it now, even if it's something like your tire popped, and you need money to replace that tire, because you can't be going with 3 tires, a spare wheel, and then without an extra wheel as backup. Anything can happen. So you need to have that emergency money that you can tap into whenever you need it, but you have to understand that you can't touch it. You don't touch it ever, except for emergency, strictly emergency situations.
That's that discipline.
Exactly. So for me, that has worked over the period of these couple of years that I've been using it for. And then what's left over, the other percentage, then that goes into whatever it is that I want to do. Then I think it's 65% that's left from that X amount of money. Right. So I got that triple 10 and 5% principle that I use. It works for me, might not work for some other people. It all depends on what you want, what your goals are, and what you're working towards.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a very important thing to have a certain principle that you
Yeah.
apply to your finances
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to be able to get where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very key.
But with that being said, we just got to touch base a little bit on spending habits, because obviously when you talk about budgeting, the whole thing of spending habits do come into the equation. The same way that we were speaking about in the previous episode about time, budgeting your time, and then all of a sudden you're streaming.
Yeah.
That's your spending, your time-based spending habits,
Mm.
right? So now let's just talk a little bit about spending habits when it comes to finances, when it comes to money, because a lot of people they do have this thing of saying, I don't have the money, right? But then they don't actually consider how they've budgeted their money. So let's just touch base on that a little bit.
Yo, I
How
feel
you
like
view spending habits.
firstly, I feel so edified by what I've just done with in terms of 70 20 10 rule, and also your triple 10 5 rule, and finding that structure for budgeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I am edified by that, and I go by that. And in terms of spending habits, bro, I think like this is where it gets tough internally. For anybody listening, it just gets tough because
Yeah.
honestly, like we I'm not gonna call it everybody because that would be a fallacy. But most people we know that there's certain things we shouldn't spend on, but we spend on it anyway. It's not in the budget,
Yeah.
but we spend on it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so spending habits, it's like it's something so crucial. And one thing that I hold as a thought process that I keep near to me is when I am budgeting how I will use a certain amount of cash. I try to leave wiggle room for wants.
Yeah.
Things that I genuinely don't need, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I genuinely, oh, it's hot today, man. I feel like I'm blurry.
Yeah.
I do not need a McFlurry.
Yeah.
But you know, I try to leave wiggle room for any of those situations.
Yeah.
Or if you're in a relationship, especially like as a gent, you
And
never.
it's
Ayo, yeah.
and we just came from Fib, but
It's different, you know what I mean? It just came from Valentine's. You know what I mean? So if you're a gent in a relationship, bro, like at any given moment in time with the amazing species of woman. Yeah, don't come for me, don't come for me. Or come for me and flood up the chats, in the comments. That's but like at any moment in time, like your lady may like want something nice, just randomly, because you just have like random cravings. Oh, it's linked with their physiological makeup that we call like periods at that time of the month or whatever. So having that wiggle room at least to not be caught off guard and be able to make the people, or even if it's a kid, if you are a person with a kid, even if it's a kid, to be able to make your loved ones happy if need be, having like that wiggle room to keep it there, that will accommodate for the unbudgeted spending habits that weren't like budgeted for, right? So that's sort of like what it is. But ultimately, like you have to like challenge yourself and really be honest with yourself and accountable to yourself. Which I guess goes back to that question about having a financial goal. If you don't have a financial goal, it's very tough to challenge yourself to have better spending habits because you have no reason or purpose to do so for the most part.
Yeah.
Because essentially it's just about living. And like I said, if financial growth is not part of your like definition, or financial security, stability, whatever, is not part of your definition for success, that's cool. And not being spicy too. Like some people are just they don't need material things. They just need the bare minimum in terms of that. And that's cool if you're that type of person. But if you're not, or you have like loved ones who are not, bro, like it's important to have that like financial goal so that you can back up and justify the discipline that you have in those spending habits. You know what I mean? But ultimately, yeah, it's an ever going process of challenging yourself and restructuring things that are hindering your financial goals if you have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. um, yeah, but I think you've covered everything on spending habits. There's nothing I need to touch up there. But flowing from spending habits, good spending habits usually equals good lifestyle, right? But bad spending habits usually leads you into the shady ones, is a bit of debt. So like I said, there's no way of talking about finance. There's no way of talking about money without talking about debt. Um, so just to touch base on that a little bit, the topic of debt. How do you? What's your opinion of it? But before you give your opinion, I just have a question to pose first. So, say there are two people that you owe money, right? I'm not saying it.
Yeah, yeah,
Say there are two people who you owe money. Um, so one person on one hand, you have 10,000 that you owe there, right? Whereas on the other hand, you have someone that you owe 4,000. So the person you owe 10,000, you don't. There's no interest on that. But the person you owe 4,000, let's just say there's about 1% interest on that. Who do you pay first?
I would pay the one with the interest first. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, according to some finance people, that is the wise thing to do. A lot of people would go for paying more money first, just to get that out the way, whereas other people might go for it because it's less money, so you can get that out the way.
When
Then you can.
When both values 4,000.
No, no, no.
I just wanted to.
One is 10, one is 4.
One is 10.
Yes.
And then the other is 4K with the 1% interest each month.
Yeah.
I mean, that would depend on how soon. Sorry, I thought I heard 4 grand each. That would depend on how soon I'll be able to cover the other. I would pay for the 10 first to get that bulk out. But I will have to understand within myself that it will take me X amount of time to pay the 10, right? And if that time that it takes me to pay the 10 um, is if the interest accumulated in that time, it would take me to pay the 10K, would end up becoming more than the 10K. Then I would pay the 4K first in that scenario. You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Then I would do it like that. It's all about like, I would try to keep what I need to pay as minimal as possible. You know, yeah, ultimately. But I think at 1%, like interest, I should be pretty good. 1% is like what, $40 more a month?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, these are small figures though that I'm using. So,
Mm.
you know, there's some people who might be owing a little bit more, some people might be owing a little bit less.
Yeah.
But when it comes to finance advisors or people with an opinion in finance, the better way to go is to go for the money with interest, right? Because essentially, what interest is money that you don't owe, technically speaking.
That's real.
So if let's say it takes you 12 months to pay the 10, right? And you have the 4 that's still waiting with interest that's accumulating. So that's 40 Rand per month. And over the period of a year, that's about 480.
Yeah, 480.
480 Rand. That's close to 500, which essentially is, what is it? 5-10%? I think 10% of 4,000. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, it's 5% from the 4,500 Rand. So you have close to 10% of money that you owe that you shouldn't take.
12% more.
Yeah. Right. So when you look at it in
and if
that
it's compounded, it's worse.
Exactly. So it also goes on to how it's calculated, the interest rate, and how much the interest, how high it is. But essentially, the ideal thing to do is to pay off money that has interest, because you don't want to pay someone for money that you don't owe, right? And if, let's take for example an institution, I know some education institutions, they charge a 1% interest rate. So if you have 40,000 going into that year of study, 1% of that is 400. You see where we're going to with this. So if you got that 40,000, 400 Rand is 1% over a period of how many months? How much you end up owe that you shouldn't technically owe?
4.8 in a year that you shouldn't have 12 months.
Imagine.
That's crazy.
So essentially that's the reason why you probably ideally should go with paying something that has interest as opposed to something that doesn't have interest 1st.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just speaking on that matter of debt, um, that is essentially the way that most times you should go about it. Um, but just to speak on how, if you're not in debt, how would you avoid getting in to begin?
Okay, firstly, that avoiding how to get into debt it's a very tough question because um, for most things that you need to do, unless you come from a background that's already like financially set, for most things that you need to do, you're gonna need to use the leverage of debt at one point or another.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So if you're building a business, for example, let's say you don't take any funding, anything bootstrapping, right? Which for anybody who doesn't know means like basically you funding the business yourself in order its expenses and needs. Right. Cool. If you need a vehicle to move around and to get around, and you don't have a vehicle yet, right? It's most likely going to be really tough that you're going to be able to either A, pull from business funds, which may not amount to the value of a vehicle,
Yeah.
or B, be able to do without a vehicle for a long amount, for however amount of time it takes for that business to be financially profitable in an abundance, where you can afford a vehicle.
Yeah.
Most likely, those two options are not gonna cut it. So you will need debt. You may not be able to pay, let's just you say 70 bands for a pre-owned vehicle. Let's just say 70 bands, right? You may not be able to pay 70K, but you may be able to pay 3K. You may afford that, you know, from your business or whatever your income stream, or even if it's your work, if it's from work, you may be able to afford that. Yeah. And that's where you will need the leverage of debt to bring certain things that you need forward, right? So it's difficult to not get into debt. I think more so, it's not about not getting into debt, personal opinion. It's not about not getting into debt. It's about one, figuring out, is this worth getting into debt for? That's one. Two, um, how can I equip myself with knowledge around the system that governs debt so that I don't find myself in a position of financial strain and financial, essentially prison?
Yeah.
Because that's what everybody's afraid of. We're not really like concerned about getting the money. Yeah. That's the easy part. The concern lies, what if I end up as those people that need to be repoed and have their possessions taken because they can't afford the debt? That's the key. So for me, I look at it through the lens of how do I avoid that, you know, as opposed to avoid getting into debt as a whole. Because at some point, unless you are coming from a background that is already financially set, and somebody can write a check for 100K for this, 300K for that, etc. Unless you're in that situation, you most likely will need that. And I think on that question, in terms of how to avoid drowning in debt, and not being and having your stuff repossessed and stuff, I may have like a better opinion in terms of that specific question.
Okay, so okay.
Oh, okay. So in that case, one, you have to equip yourself with knowledge. Again, we referenced this in the previous episode. I should definitely check that out if you haven't watched that. But we referenced this. There's a scripture that says, "For my people die for a lack of knowledge." Right. So that's scripture in the Bible, but it applies to so many things when you think about it. You have to understand what is debt? How much am I going to need to pay back? How does interest work? What is simple interest versus compound interest? What does the contract say when I'm getting that money? Am I able to read the contract?
Yeah.
Side note, okay, now I've already started. Side note, I went to a bank before and they wanted me to sign something for the purposes of my account working. And I asked if I could have the contract and I could go home with it, read it, and come back. And they were like, no, that's not possible.
Never.
That, like, that's not possible. I'm like, okay, so how do I do it? Do I have to read it now? They're like, I mean, you can. This is about 39 pages, but you can.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, maybe it's not 39, but it's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
Right. So, one, there are ways around that where you understand what's in the, you can do your own research prior, right? Understanding what's in that debt structure. What do these terminologies mean that they explain to you? They say like compound interest or whatnot. That type of information will equip you to know what you're getting yourself into, which will then allow you to determine, okay, njengoba ngifuna ukuthenga lo phaqa from Steve Madden, right? For my English audience, as I'm looking to buy these slops, slippers, I don't know, sandals.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. Sandals from Steve Madden. Like, is this going to be worthwhile for me to have to pay this amount of money? You can then start, again, since we are talking about the value of money, essentially, you can then start determining, once you know, you can determine, is this valuable for me to use my money on, not only now, but in the long term? Okay, I want to get that Merc. I want a car now. I want to get that Merc. It's nice, I can afford it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I qualify. You know what I'm saying? What is the categories of qualify? Why did they say that? But that's another subject. Once you know, for example, okay, I can get this Merc, but what are they actually saying, and what am I opening myself up to in the future? Then you can make better decisions, and you might even realize, hey, okay, I want this Merc. Maybe let me not get it right now, because I have another goal, financial goal, that will equip me to be able to get that Merc in a wiser perspective and situation, right? So I'd say that with like most critically, like knowledge, right? Research, right? Which you can do on YouTube, bro. You can do that on YouTube. You don't like reading? A lot of people don't like reading. Cool. YouTube, bro. Audio book, bro. There's even like apps like I forgot the name of the app is it's slipping my mind. Anyways, no free shout outs. So there's a name of an app. There's an app, if you Google like text to audio app, free app even, you will find multiple apps that can do that. So that change those words into audio in an engaging way. So you get that information, understand that, and then you are in an equipped position to not financially drown yourself, because with each financial decision you will be making going forward, you already have an understanding of, okay, I've already got that Merc. I did my research, I saw that I can get that Merc, but I might not be able to do a few more things that I used to do. And that's okay. I'm willing to sacrifice that. It's valuable for me. I'm getting that Merc. Boom. Even that's like that knowledge that you now have, even in future spending habits that you'll be tempted to engage in, you think twice and you realize, this is not the wisest thing for me, and you then avoid that financial drowning and that drowning in debt. That would be my take. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the Dumo Show. If you do want, of course, catch the rest of the episode, you can head over to Spotify, the Dumo Show. You can catch the rest of the episode there. Thank you so much. From myself, from Ari the Design, and everyone back at the studio, Sirt.
Yeah.